Hello friends, and welcome to a brand new camera comparison between the Samsung Galaxy S23 FE against the regular S23. Right now we are recording at 4K at 30 frames per second. Tell me in the comment section below which one do you think has better colors and which one has a better audio.
As always, let's begin by comparing their front cameras. In the first sample, both phones capture most of the details of my face. However, the regular S23 stands out by accurately preserving my skin color, which is a plus. On the other hand, the picture taken with the S23 FE appears a bit dull, which isn't quite to my liking. In the next scene, the FE shows some improvements compared to before, but I still believe the S23 looks better overall. The latter captures my skin color more accurately, and my hair appears more defined. It is also doing better when it comes to the dynamic range. Regarding their main cameras, both devices are generally quite similar to each other. It's worth mentioning that all the daylight pictures were taken in auto mode, and no edits were made afterwards. This ensures a fair and unbiased comparison between the two phones. While the cameras are mostly similar, I lean more towards the flagship S23, and there are good reasons for that. The S23 captures pictures with more vibrancy, which I find likable. In some samples, the S23 FE lacks the level of detail found in its more premium counterpart, further supporting my preference for the S23. As you can clearly see from these samples, the S23 shines at keeping the greenery brighter, capturing the scenes almost exactly as they appeared in real life. On the other hand, the S23 FE struggles to retain the same level of vibrant colors seen in the smaller S23, resulting in darker-looking trees. In my eyes, the Galaxy S23 does a better job when lighter colors are on the frame. In this particular sample, the building here looks much better on the regular S23 compared to the S23 Fan Edition. Overall, in terms of their main cameras, despite the fact that they both have the same sensor, I believe the S23 outperforms the S23 FE in certain aspects, but the difference isn't significantly huge even though it offers sharper pictures with more vibrancy. Both phones also come equipped with ultra-wide cameras, and they generally continue the positive trend seen in their main cameras. The S23 tends to be more contrasty, which usually works well, but in some cases, it can backfire. For instance, in this particular scenario, the fountain and certain greenery elements aren't as visible on the S23 compared to the S23 FE. In terms of sky rendition, I lean towards the vanilla S23, as it does a much better job of retaining the blue colors and preventing objects that are further away from being washed out like on the S23 FE. Similarly to their main cameras, the S23 shines in situations with plentiful trees and greenery. It captures pictures with better colors, which are more pleasing to the eyes even though the S23 FE isn't really far behind. There were, however, cases where I couldn't find any differences at all between the devices. Both the S23 and S23 FE produced great pictures with identical colors and dynamic range. Having similar results between the two devices isn't necessarily bad, since no matter which phone you'll end up choosing, you can be sure that its cameras won't be disappointing. With pictures taken at 3x, I noticed that the S23 is a bit sharper compared to the new S23 FE. They do also have slightly different colors. At this zoom range, I prefer the regular model since the sensor used in the FE is old and it doesn't quite match the one found on the S23. Because the telephoto of the FE has only 8 megapixels, the device tries to compensate by artificially making the pictures sharper, but in my eyes they don't look as good and as refined as the ones taken with the S23. Their similarities persist even in portrait mode. As evident from the images, both cameras capture my dress and skin color with accuracy. While the background may appear better on the S23, concerning the subject, they seem quite similar. When we closely crop in on my face, the S23 shows a slight advantage in retaining finer details, but the FE is not far behind. When it comes to edge detection, it seems to be similar, if not identical. When recording videos with their main cameras, just like with pictures, the greenery on the S23 is brighter and to my eyes it looks better. As for stabilization, they are almost identical, but like I said, I prefer the lighter colors of the compact S23. The FE is darker overall and I don't like it that much. With their ultra-wide cameras, I was surprised when I saw that they both took almost identical videos. The colors, the stabilization and even the dynamic range were the same. I was actually impressed with the S23 FE. Moving to low light, and from now on, every picture is taken with night mode enabled. In this specific case, it is actually the FE that does a better job with face details. The S23 has better colors, but my face isn't as sharp as on the S23 FE. The regular S23, however, makes a strong comeback in the next scene, and I personally prefer it over the FE. It's important to note that the camera on the S23 is Samsung's top-of-the-line offering, while the front camera of the FE is an older sensor. With their main cameras in this sample, the Galaxy S23 Fan Edition appears brighter when compared to the S23. However, it's essential to remember that brightness alone doesn't always guarantee superior performance, and here I prefer the latter, which retains more that night scenery. When we crop in, it becomes obvious that the S23 performs significantly better by keeping better control over the lights. Although neither of them produces sharp images, I personally prefer the results from the regular model due to its better handling of lights. In some instances, like here, it can be challenging to spot any noticeable difference between the two, as both cameras deliver great picture quality. In some other pictures, the S23 is clearly much better than the FE model. For instance, in here, the Galaxy S23 does an amazing job capturing the details of light bulbs, while the FE's result looks much worse in comparison. The S23, similar to its performance in daylight, produces pictures with more vibrancy. However, in certain cases like this one, the S23 FE isn't far behind, making it difficult to pick a clear winner between the two. They maintain the same trend even with the ultra-wide cameras. Both devices show consistency between their lenses, but in my opinion, the S23 performs slightly better. However, the difference is often so small that it may not be worth mentioning. Although the S23 is better in some situations, the camera alone might not be exciting enough to justify the higher price. There are exceptions, but for the most part they aren't as different. The cameras of the S23 FE are almost as good as the ones on its more expensive sibling in 90% of cases. So, if you plan to buy the FE, the cameras shouldn't be a concern. The biggest differences in my opinion are at 3x zoom. Just like in daylight, even at night the S23 is brighter and overall sharper compared to the S23 FE, which isn't as refined. In some samples like here, even with this lens, the FE does a great job, but the regular S23 is still doing better. Considering that the telephoto lens isn't the most important one, I don't see this as a big win for the flagship S23. With portraits at low light, there is a totally different story. Even though during the day both were similar, here the S23 is doing much better with my face, my dress, and even the background. My face on the FE isn't as vibrant as on the S23, that's why I prefer the latter. So, guys, what do you think? If you enjoyed this video, a thumbs up would be greatly appreciated. Thank you for watching, and if you'd like to see more content like this, please consider subscribing to my channel.